Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to our Hope is Not a Plan Legal and Financial Planning for Family Caregivers Conference. I'm so delighted to see some of you joining us this morning, and I hope that this event will be wonderful and very informative for you all. Now, the USC Family Caregiver Support Center is pleased to provide this half day event for families and relatives who want to learn more about legal and financial planning as they take care of one or more loved ones. Today's topics will range from common estate planning mistakes to options for long term care and finally, financial empowerment for older adults. I'm Jenny Peterson, and I'll be your host for today's program. Or I guess I should say hostess, right? Before we begin, I want to introduce you, our lovely audience out there watching this live stream with us. I want to introduce you to our center in case you do not know who we are yet. Now, simply put, the USC Family Caregiver Support Center serves and supports family caregivers as they navigate through their caregiving journey. The center provides services such as information and referral, support groups, evidence based trainings, education, community ed, and much, much more to family caregivers seeking help. We like to think of ourselves as a valuable lifeline and an important resource for family caregivers. Our center is also home to the Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center, which is part of the California statewide system of 11 caregiver resource centers. So, wherever you are within the state of California, there is a caregiver resource center that serves your area. Although we are in the middle of a pandemic, we strongly believe that family caregivers still need support, perhaps even more in these very, very trying and stressful times. Our goal here is to bridge the gaps that COVID has caused in our caregiving community. Social isolation for caregivers, for everyone in general, is at an all time high. So, in bringing you a virtual event, we hope to provide family caregivers some support and guidance in the comfort and safety of their own homes. You don't have to go anywhere. You can just log in from your own computer. You can be sitting in your pajamas, drinking your coffee, right? So, now we recognize that caring for a loved one can be a rewarding experience. Of course, that being said, we also realize that on the flip side, caregiving is not an easy responsibility to shoulder. Caregiving certainly does come with its own costs, whether those costs are financial, physical, emotional, or mental. When we are totally busy trying to accomplish the numerous day to day tasks of caregiving, we're worrying about meals, going to doctor's visits, just trying to get somewhere on time, right? How do we have any time to consider our long term plans for ourselves and the people that we're caring for? Thinking about the legal and financial aspects of caregiving can really feel very overwhelming, challenging, and confusing. You may not want to even think about it, right? There are so many things to consider that you may even give up thinking about it before you start. Or maybe you keep procrastinating. You know that you're supposed to do it, but you keep putting it off, right? Well, fear not, my friends. We're here to help you today to manage the stress of finding some legal and financial advice. We are bringing the experts from our community to you. Today's topics will range from common estate planning mistakes, options for long term care, and financial empowerment for older adults. This half day virtual conference will actually kick off our upcoming 6 week educational series this fall. I like to call it an appetizer for our educational series. So each Friday from September 3rd to October 8th, we will release a new video on our YouTube channel discussing how family caregivers may be affected by legal and financial planning issues. Each of these videos will be led by professionals who have worked in this field for many, many years and have helped many caregivers and families with their particular knowledge and expertise. For more information on these upcoming events, you can visit the website address at the bottom of the screen. Now, we also invite you to interact with us and our staff in the chat. We have our staff from our center who would love to say hi to you and respond to some of your comments. So don't be shy. Go ahead and say hello to us and let us know if you're enjoying this half-day conference. Okay. Now, this chat feature is also a great opportunity for you to talk with other caregivers who may also be tuning in and watching the event at the same time. Now, please note that you must be logged into either your YouTube account or Facebook account, depending on where you are watching us from this morning, in order to submit your comments. It won't let you submit your comments if you're not logged into YouTube or Facebook, depending on where you are watching us from. Okay? So let's get this show going. For our first presentation, we're pleased to welcome Sarah Polinsky from the law offices of Sarah Polinsky in Sherman Oaks. Ms. Polinsky is an elder law attorney who specializes in the topics that we will be discussing today. She will be giving us an overview of the most common planning mistakes people make and covering some of the crucial legal documents that family caregivers should be aware of. Thanks, Sarah, and take it away.
Thank you for this opportunity to be here and present some important information about common mistakes that people make when it comes to planning and estate planning most specifically. We'll go through some very typical myths and hopefully provide good information going forward. So starting with number one, one of the most common planning mistakes that people make has to do with joint tenancy ownership of property. Joint tenancy is the most common form of co-ownership of property, and it's either joint tenancy or tenancy in common. Most people know joint tenancy because it's common, husbands and wives, parents and children, but also because it avoids probate. If two people co-own as joint tenants and one of them passes away, then at the first death, the survivor will be able to take full ownership of the property by filing some documents instead of having to go through probate or through the courts. But what a lot of people don't realize is that joint tenancy has some unintended consequences. The first of which is disinheritance of heirs. If you add one of your three children to title as a joint tenant, when you pass away, your property will pass to that adult child. But the minute you added that child to title, you automatically disinherited your other two children. What people don't realize is joint tenancy supersedes everything else. So even if there was a trust or will done in the past saying that I want my property to be divided equally between my three children, the moment that parent added their adult child to the title as a joint tenant, they disinherited the other two children. And this is very common, and the disinheritance happens unknowingly. So that's just something important to be aware of. The other issue with joint tenancy is that it creates a loss of control. When you own your own property, you can sell it, you can refinance it at any time, you can do whatever you want. But when you add somebody else to title, now you have a co-owner there with you. And so if you want to sell, they have to agree. If they decide to sell and you don't agree, that can cause problems. If you need to refinance and they're on title and they have credit issues, that can cause a problem for you to get the loan that you need. So the loss of control with the addition of another co-owner is something to consider definitely. And then finally, it can also create exposure to unintended creditors. If you add your adult child and they get sued or they have to file for bankruptcy, or let's say that they're married and during the course of their marriage, they helped pay for a new roof for your house, or they installed or made some improvements to your property. When they get divorced, a portion of your home can be claimed by their divorcing spouse. So it creates situations where you are not necessarily the only one making decisions about your property, and it binds another person to whatever happens to the property. It's just not the best way. There are other alternatives where you can retain control and not expose yourself or your property to these types of consequences. Okay, next, mistake number 2, waiting until somebody is incapacitated to get a power of attorney. This is probably one of the most common and frequent calls we get here is my mom, my sister, my dad, my brother, my aunt had a stroke, is in the hospital, has dementia, and I need to get a power of attorney so I can take charge of the finances and help them pay their bills. It doesn't work like that. The misconception is that the person who will be making the decisions is the one that signs the power of attorney. But the reality is that it's the person who has become incapacitated that has to sign the power of attorney, giving the power to somebody else to act for them in the future once they become incapacitated. So a power of attorney is a document that is signed today while you are of sound mind, able to understand what you're doing, signed by you to be used in the future if you become unable to act for yourself or if you become incapacitated, where you designate somebody else to be able to act for you at that time. So, unfortunately, waiting until someone is incapacitated to obtain a power of attorney to be able to help that incapacitated person isn't going to work. And the power of attorney should be done ahead of time, not at the time of incapacity. Next, mistake number 3, thinking that a will avoids probate. A will actually, typically, depending on the value of somebody's estate, a will typically has to be probated. What that means is it has to be enforced, interpreted, and presented to a court so that the wishes under the will can be carried out. Probate means that if a person passes away and at the time of their death, their name is on title to a piece of property or accounts of a certain value, then in order to remove their name, a court order is required. So if I own a house and the title to my house says Sarah Polinsky, that's all fine and good. And let's say I make out a will that says, when I die, I want my house to go to Susie. Susie won't read my will until after I pass away. And at the time of my death, she sees that I've left my house to her in my will. She goes to try to sell the house, and the realtor says, well, wait a second, Susie, who's this Sarah Polinsky who's on title? And since I'm no longer here to transfer the title over to Susie, she can't sell it because the house is not in her name. Since I'm gone, the only way for her to get the title in her name is to go through probate. So probate means she has to petition the court, give them my will, prove that I'm the Sarah that wrote the will, that she's the Susie named in the will, that this is the property, clear all kinds of or whatever creditor issues may exist. And when the probate process is complete, then the property will be transferred to Susie by the court. Probate in California takes a long time and it's expensive because it's based on a percentage of the value of the estate when somebody dies. It's 4% of the first 100,000 of value, 3% of the next 100,000, 2% of the next 800,000, 1% of the next 9 million, and there can be additional fees. So having a will just lets a judge know what your wishes are versus if you didn't have a will. But having a will on its own is not sufficient to avoid probate if you own real estate worth $50,000 or more, or have liquid assets that have a combined total of 166,000 or more and don't fall into any of the exceptions for probate. So that's important to know. Okay. Moving on, mistake number 4, not funding a living trust. For people who have living trusts, the trust itself is the document, and the things that the trust owns, property, bank accounts, those are the assets owned by the trust, and that's what the trust is funded with. So if you have a living trust, you transfer ownership of your assets to the trust name. The example I gave before with a house that's in my name, in the name of Sarah Polinsky. If I make out a trust versus just a will, but if I make out a living trust, not only am I going to say in my trust, I want Susie to have my house, I'm also going to change the title of my house to be in the name of the trust. I'm going to change the title from Sarah Polinsky to Sarah, trustee of Sarah's trust. As soon as I put the name on the title of my asset, that asset now belongs to the trust, or the trust, we can say the trust is funded with that asset. And if you have a living trust, but you don't transfer your assets to the trust, or you don't fund your trust, at the time of your passing, the trust won't be able to do its job. And the assets that you thought were protected by the trust will still end up going through probate. So for those of you that have living trusts, you need to check the title of your assets, and you need to make sure that whatever you think you have in the trust, property, investment or brokerage accounts, things like that, you want to make sure that you see the trust name on the title, because if that asset doesn't have the trust name, that asset, the trust is not funded with that asset, and it will potentially end up going through probate if something happens to you. Okay, so that's important to know that funding, setting up the trust is part one, but funding the trust or transferring ownership of your assets to the trust is very important as well. Moving along, mistake number 5, failing to update beneficiary designations on retirement accounts and life insurance. This kind of goes along with probate avoidance as well. If you have a beneficiary named on certain assets, that asset will not go to probate when you pass away because you have this beneficiary designation on that account or on that contract or on that policy. But many times people name beneficiaries when they retire, when they open a new account, and then they kind of forget about it. And they kind of know in the back of their mind that, well, I have a beneficiary there, so I'm good and it's protected, and they don't think about it again. The problem is that we see many times when people named someone and that person has since passed away, or the person named as the beneficiary was a spouse that the client is now divorced from, or an adult child who is no longer competent, or who maybe has substance abuse issues. The point is that it's important to revisit beneficiary designations. It's just as important as revisiting other legal documents, because if you name somebody as a beneficiary and you have a different beneficiary in your will and living trust, the company will only pay out to whoever is named on the contract. So updating your legal documents is not sufficient of an update for beneficiary designations. You actually have to go to the financial institution or the life insurance company or the firm holding your 401k and make sure that you have current beneficiaries on there that reflect your current wishes. Okay. Mistake number 6, along the same lines, failing to update documents or your estate plan. Um, the documents that you have are only as good as the wishes that they reflect. So if you set up a trust and powers of attorney 20 years ago when your children were minors and you named your siblings or best friend or your parents as the decision makers, well, things have changed. Children are now grown and adults may have passed away or become incapacitated. And if something happens to you and you haven't updated your documents to reflect what your current circumstances are, it will cause a lot of problems because your legal documents will give authority to someone to act for you that maybe is no longer capable of acting, or maybe you don't want them to be in charge of your affairs or decision making anymore. So, as things change in your life, as people come in and out of your life, as maybe health issues develop or relationships change, make sure that you update your documents, powers of attorney, healthcare directives, living trust, and wills to reflect what your current wishes are, so that if something should happen to you, the people that you want acting for you are the ones who have those tools that they'll need to do that for you. Um, okay, moving on to mistake number 7, the selection of decision makers, choosing the wrong person or people to handle your affairs. This is a very difficult part of the process for a lot of my clients. They struggle with who to name to be in charge of financial and medical decisions because sometimes they don't know. Sometimes they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. They think that maybe their firstborn or their oldest should be the one named. And the idea here, when you're choosing a successor trustee or an agent under a power of attorney or an executor to your will, the idea is to be selfish. I share with my clients that this is the time to really look and think about, who do you want at your side, acting for you, advocating for you, making good decisions on your behalf. They don't necessarily need to have professional knowledge, or they don't need to be a lawyer. They can hire a lawyer. They don't have to be a realtor. They can hire a realtor. Your loved ones that you appoint to act for you will always be able to get professional assistance to carry out their duties, to help take care of things for you. But if they don't have a good relationship with you, if you don't feel that they'll show up at a time of crisis, um, if an emergency occurs, then they're not the right person to name. Um, I often share with clients that, especially for medical decision making, it's good to name somebody that is maybe compassionate and patient and understands that things can take time. Um, in financial decision making, obviously somebody who's trustworthy, who will do what's best for you, what's right for you. Those are the people that you want to think about. And if you have multiple individuals that you want to name, that's great. I always think it's a good idea to name alternates and backup individuals in case something happens to your primary person. But choosing someone just because you don't want to hurt their feelings, or because of birth order, or just because somebody expects to be named in your documents, it's not good. I've seen too many times when my clients become incapacitated, or even when they pass away, and the decision making goes to someone who's not really the right person for the job, and it makes things a lot more complicated than they have to be. So it's good to really give some thought and name the right person for the job for this. Okay. All right. Mistake number 8. Um, Controlling from the grave. This is a little silly one, but it's true. A lot of times clients struggle to get their legal affairs and their legal documents put together because they want to plan for every what if, and they worry, understandably, and they want to cover every eventuality that may come up even after they're gone. And I caution clients from doing that because, controlling from the grave presupposes that as things are today, that's how they're going to be years and decades into the future, even after you're gone. And we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what there's going to be. And unfortunately, this fear of trying to plan for every eventuality actually stops people from planning for what they know today and what they can protect. And so controlling from the grave is um, not productive, and I discourage it. What I rather encourage is plan for what you know, put into effect what you think will happen, what you want to do. If things come to pass and you're still alive and competent, you can always update your documents and make changes as necessary, in line with whatever change circumstances happen in your life. But it's better to do it that way than to try to stress about knowing what's going to happen in the future and after you're gone. So I try to discourage controlling from the grave whenever possible. All right, next, mistake number 9, failing to establish competency at time of signing. This is something that I've seen recently happen a lot, where a client passes away and they're wish challenged. Their adult children or beneficiaries don't like what's come to pass, and one of the most common things that people like to say to undo legal documents is to say that their mom or dad or loved one who has passed didn't know what they were signing, or they were incapacitated at the time of signing. Um, like most attorneys, we do our own kind of due diligence to assess whether or not somebody is competent or able to understand uh, what they're trying to do and the consequences of their actions. We often turn to professionals, doctors, neurologists, to confirm competency and capacity. And it's something that I encourage my clients to do when they're making documents or updating documents, especially if they share with me that there's already some turmoil or maybe potential family chaos in the works. It's good to just have the client go to their own doctor and say, hey, doc, can you give me a letter saying that I am able to make my own decisions, or that I'm mentally competent and able to make my own decisions. It's just a couple of sentences, and it's usually not a problem because the patient is requesting the information from their own physician. And what it does is it kind of clears the air that if there are any suspicions that the person is not able to act for themselves, or, if there's an assumption that somebody is forcing them to do something, it helps to protect what they're doing. It helps to protect their wishes and the integrity of whatever documents they create. So it's just a matter of good practice, in my opinion, to establish that somebody is competent at the time that they're signing their legal documents. Okay. Mistake number 10, not seeking long-term care benefits because you own a home. As part of my elder law practice, over the years, I've helped many families to qualify for long-term care benefits, particularly Medi-Cal long-term care benefits, to help pay for nursing home care. When somebody ends up needing long-term care in a nursing facility, it can become very expensive. And so the state of California has the Medi-Cal long-term care program available to help pay for such care. In the qualification process, We have to look at assets and income and things like that. But one of the biggest mistakes that people make is the assumption that if you own a home, you can't qualify for assistance to pay for nursing home care. And I have met so many families over the years that have a loved one at home who really needs to be in a facility. Their level of care, their level of need is so high, but they're afraid to place them in a nursing home or a convalescent facility because they know that they can't afford it. And they think that since they own a home, they have to sell the house before they can apply for benefits, or just owning the home itself doesn't allow them to qualify. Well, that is not true. Under California law, you can apply for Medi-Cal and Medi-Cal long-term care benefits even if you own a home, so long as you have an intent to return to or remain in that home. And it's a subjective intent. So if you were to ask any patient in a nursing facility where they would rather be, they would all prefer to be at home if it was medically feasible to do so. So the home itself does not prevent eligibility for Medi-Cal benefits. The rules do vary state to state, but in California, that's currently where we are. There will be a cap on exempt equity. Rules will be coming out, but as it stands right now, owning a home does not prevent anybody from applying for and qualifying for long-term care benefits under Medi-Cal. Okay. Um, okay. Mistake number 11. Overlooking HIPAA and its impact on outdated medical directives. After a certain year, medical directives don't necessarily expire, but since the HIPAA regulations came out, it may be good practice to update those documents and to get HIPAA privacy waivers set up. So, for those of you that don't know, HIPAA is the set of rules that make our medical records private and confidential. If I were to call my client's physician and ask them for my client's most recent diagnosis, the doctor can't provide that information to me, obviously, because it's private and confidential. When someone's going to be using a healthcare directive to make medical decisions for you if you become incapacitated, you're going to want those individuals, your healthcare agents, to in fact have access to your medical information because you want them to make informed and knowing decisions on your behalf. So whenever I do a healthcare directive for clients, I always include for them a HIPAA privacy waiver. And in that waiver, they are allowing their doctors to release their confidential medical information to whoever may be acting as their healthcare agent, so that if they need a second opinion, if they need to review medical information before authorizing treatment or procedures of some kind, that they'll be able to access it on behalf of my client. So having the HIPAA waiver as part of the legal documents is a good matter of good practice, and everyone should have one. Mistake number 12, relying on others for important information that turns out to be wrong or incorrect. And I can't tell you how many times over the course of my practice I hear from people, or I get calls or emails that they heard from their neighbor's sister's hairdresser that this happened, or their mother-in-law was at a meeting and she heard that they told her this. And so, at the end of the day, even the most well-intentioned professionals don't have all of the necessary information and may not intend to do something bad, but may not be providing the most accurate information that you need. So I've had situations where maybe an accountant wasn't fair with the fact that a retirement account may be considered non-countable for Medi-Cal eligibility. Or I had a social worker tell a client that, as I shared before, that since they own a house, they may not qualify for Medi-Cal. Um, or, a non-professional say that they know for a fact that all you need is a will, and then your estate is protected from probate. So you have to go to the right person for the right information. I think that, we as professionals, we try to stay in our lane and give information about what we know, and stay quiet about what we don't know. But if you're relying on information, especially that affects your property, your family, your health, your future incapacity, you got to go to the right person for the job. Okay, so um, I joke around and I say, you wouldn't take your car to the doctor if it broke down. You'd take it to the mechanic, and you wouldn't take your broken arm to the mechanic. You'd go to the doctor. So you got to go to the right professional for the right information. All right. Mistake number 13, omitting an heir. Um, an omitted heir is a forgotten heir. It's someone who legally may be entitled to a portion of your estate, like an adult, or like a child, a biological child, or if you don't have children, maybe your parents or your siblings, but they're not mentioned, they're not acknowledged, and they're presumed to be forgotten. So you absolutely are entitled to exclude or disinherit heirs. If you don't want to leave something to someone, you don't have to. But you can't not name that person and pretend that they don't exist. You have to name them, and then I always add an exclusionary statement, something to the effect of, I intentionally and with full knowledge of the consequences exclude any and all provisions for my son, John Smith, or something like that. Because if you acknowledge them, then they can't be presumed to be forgotten, because forgotten heirs are actually protected to some degree under California law. So if you don't want someone included, you have to name them, and then verbally or in writing in the documents exclude them, and then that will solve that problem. But not naming them and pretending that they don't exist actually will create additional problems, and it's not something that I advise people to do. Okay, mistake number 14, um, changing documents to appease others. I come across this, unfortunately, sometimes with my elderly clients, my frail elderly clients. They are competent, but they want to make someone happy. And so, an example would be, if an adult child reviews their parents' living trust and power of attorney documents, and maybe they don't like what they've read, and they think that instead of their brother being the primary decision maker, they should be the primary decision maker, and they make a fuss and they upset the client, and the client calls me and says, my daughter was here over the weekend and she read it over, and she's really mad that I put her brother in charge ahead of her. So I want to change my documents because I don't want her to be mad at me. As I said earlier, when you're choosing decision makers, especially, you really have to be selfish. You have to do what you feel is best for you at a time when you might be incapacitated. Who's the right person to take care of things for you? As it relates to beneficiaries, when I have my clients pressured by loved ones to change percentages or distribution plans, it's really it's something that is really bothersome to me, because your stuff is your own and you can do whatever you want with it so long as you're competent and of sound mind. So changing your documents to make somebody else happy when it contradicts or goes against what your wishes are and what you really want is something that I discouraged. I've actually had situations where I've told clients that I'm not comfortable making such changes because I feel that they're reacting to pressure instead of doing something of their own volition. So something to be mindful is when you are working with your documents, if you're making changes, make sure that the changes are what you want them to be, because I think the integrity of your wishes will be better protected that way. Mistake number 15, failing to remove a decedent from title. I think it's a matter of good practice that when somebody passes away, if their name is on title to something, it's good to clean up title and remove their name whenever possible. Um, Leaving somebody who's deceased on title can cause problems from a fraud standpoint or identity theft. I had a situation where I was doing a living trust for a client, and she herself was in her early 90s, and she lived in her family home always. She never left. Her parents each passed away decades earlier, but she figured since this is her home and she's the last survivor, the house is hers. And when we went to go and pull the title to the house to transfer it into her trust, we saw that the people on title were her parents. There was never a removal of them at the time of their passing, neither one of them. So it ended up being an extended probate situation. One of them had died so long ago that we were unable to obtain a death certificate. But it took extra time, and it created a lot of complications where all of that could have been avoided had the title been cleaned up along the way. So same thing, with bank accounts or investments. Um, Title of an asset is proof of ownership. And so to me, having current ownership reflect who actually is current owner is important. And taking off someone who's deceased will just make things easier in the long run for future transactions like sale of a property or a refinance or opening and closing accounts, things like that. So it's just good practice to do that. And then finally, getting to the end here, mistake number 16 is procrastinating or doing nothing. Um, I've been doing this for over 20 years now, and I've met so many people who call me or come see me and they say, I'm almost ready. I know I need to do this, but I'm just not quite ready. And they keep putting it off. And I understand the the stresses and sometimes even, anxiety, having to face some of these questions and these issues. But 9 times out of 10, that which worries my clients the most, that causes the delays in getting their paperwork in order, is exactly the problem that will be at the surface as soon as something happens to them. It's maybe a conflict between their adult children, or not being able to decide who should be in charge, or it's not wanting to leave an equal distribution to their children because one has been taking care of them and they want to leave them a little something extra, but they feel bad about the other one, so they just do nothing and hope for the best. It's not wanting to leave anything to an adult child who is an alcoholic, not realizing that if they pass away and it goes to probate, that adult child that they don't want to include will be included by law. So putting things off and doing nothing is, I have it as the last mistake here, but it's really very common, and it's one of the biggest mistakes, because if you don't plan, all of the worries that you have a better chance of coming true than if you face them and plan for them and address them in your legal documents, knowing that you can always update things as life changes, but at least you have your wishes made known, and your loved ones have instructions from you and the tool you need to help take care of things for you, whereas they don't have anything, and will be effectively tied if something happens to you and you don't have it in place. So it's just a good idea to get on it and get some legal paperwork done and get order. Okay. So that about wraps it up for me. Again, thank you for for joining, and I hope that this is helpful. And take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for that informative presentation. I think your last point there, that procrastinating and doing nothing, is kind of how we came up with the title of this event. You know, hope is not a plan. A lot of us, we kind of procrastinate and we hope things work out, but in the legal and financial planning realm, that really doesn't work out as well as we think it will, right? And I think that the thing that stands out the most in this presentation is that family caregivers really need to prepare ourselves legally and financially for the day when our loved one becomes incapacitated, right? And I know that it's a very difficult, very hard conversation to be had. There's a lot of taboos around it, and you know, sometimes some older members of the family really just don't want to talk about it. You know, they think it's sort of inviting some bad juju or some bad vibes, right? And so it is. I 100% agree that it's a hard conversation, but it is something that needs to be done. Avoiding it really will not help in the long run. It might actually end up making things even more complicated than we had originally intended, right? So, as we continue our journeys as family caregivers, we should keep in mind these common planning mistakes that Sarah just mentioned and went over with us. And those planning mistakes and knowing the common pitfalls will help us to make smarter and more effective decisions. Next up, we are joined by Kim Selfin from Betzedek, which is a nonprofit organization that provides free legal services for low income individuals. Ms. Selfin is an IHSS and Medi-Cal policy specialist at Betzedek, and she is here to discuss our options for long term care. So, thanks for joining us today, Kim, and take it away.
Thanks everyone for joining us today for this session of Caring for a Loved One Options for Long-Term Care. My name is Kim Selfon. I am an advocate at Betzedek Legal Services, and this is my contact information, and it'll be on the last slide too, so you don't have to write that down right now. Next slide. So Betzedek Legal Services is a legal aid agency. We're a law firm, and we serve the whole county of Los Angeles. We specialize in working with older adults and seniors and disabled people and their caregivers. Let's see. We help with all kinds of different issues. We have a conservatorship clinic in the court, and we help anybody file for conservatorship over the person. We do the paperwork for you, and then you would appear in court, so we help pro per. We also have a clinic for elder abuse restraining orders, and we assist for free. All our services are free, it's just depending on the situation whether or not you would qualify. I specialize in helping people with Medi-Cal eligibility and in-home supportive services, which is Medi-Cal's home care program. I help people get more in-home supportive services hours. We also offer assistance, sometimes with powers of attorney for finances and healthcare, and we offer simple will assistance. So that's Betzedek Services. Check us out online. And let's continue with the next slide. So really, I'm here today to talk to you about long-term care. So we've heard the words long-term care, but long-term care means a lot of different things. So I'm going to talk about the different ways, the different definitions of long-term care and what they are, kind of break it down because it's important as far as getting long-term care services paid for, what kind of long-term care service a person needs. So long-term care is caring for someone who needs help with either a physical or an emotional need for an extended period of time. So there are all kinds of situations where you may be providing long-term care for someone. Like my grandmother had Alzheimer's disease, so my family provided long-term care for her for a very long time in different situations at home. And then when she got worse and my grandfather couldn't take care of her, she went to an assisted living. And then when she got worse, she went to a nursing home. So she had long-term care at home, in an assisted living, and in a nursing home. People can provide long-term care for somebody with a developmental disability or somebody with a mental illness that needs assistance at home or wherever they are for a long period of time. There are two types of long-term care. Is broken down into two types generally. When you hear custodial care, that's one type of long-term care. And the other type of long-term care we're going to talk about is skilled care. Next slide, please. So here's the definitions and more information about each type of care. So custodial care is provided by non-licensed caregivers. Custodial care is not medical care. It can take place at home or in an assisted living or at a nursing home, and it really involves giving someone assistance with activities of daily living, like dressing, bathing, walking, cooking. These activities of daily living that normally people are able to provide on their own, and then at some point, either based on age or disability, they need assistance completing the activity of daily living. It's not a medical need. It's a custodial need. That's why they call it custodial care. The other type of care is skilled care. So skilled care is much more like a medical need, a medical service. So skilled care is medically necessary care that's provided or supervised by licensed medical personnel. And this can take place at home, again, in assisted living, or in a facility. So examples of types of skilled care are physical therapy, right? Maybe someone had a stroke, they're recovering, they have physical therapy in the nursing home, they go home, then they have physical therapy at home. The therapist can then go to the home and provide physical therapy, a skilled physical therapist providing that care. Wound care. IVs are considered skilled care, catheters, injections, anything that normally, excuse me, a medical professional would provide, that kind of service is skilled care or nursing care. Nursing care is also considered skilled care. Next slide, please. So when we talk about long-term care today, I wish I had kind of better news for you, but unfortunately, the long-term care process, getting long-term care is often very challenging because it's a disintegrated system, not an integrated system, a disintegrated system of medical and social supports. There are all these different players involved in long-term care, and often they don't work together well. The different providers may not talk to each other. It's not a one door, no wrong door system. So it's very challenging to care for somebody who needs long-term care. If you are in the position of caring for someone that needs long-term care, this is not news to you. And I'm guessing you're already dealing with these systems because you're here today at this presentation. Increasingly, as people age and as people have chronic illnesses, they're going to be faced with needing long-term care and navigating a very complex system. We work with seniors and their families, and many people, when they need long-term care, let's say they have a stroke and now they want to go home and they need support to stay at home, The system of accessing long-term care is so complex that if they don't have a family member to help them navigate, it's very, very challenging to live independently at home if they don't have assistance. And more seniors and people with disability are living alone and relying on non-family systems for long-term care, and that makes the process even more challenging. Many things we do online, as we learned during COVID, now we do many more things online. And a lot of my clients who are seniors don't use email, they don't have a printer. It's hard for them to access services online. Maybe someone will have a visual disability they can't see, they can't complete the forms online, or physical disability where they can't complete forms because they can't move their fingers to complete the form online. So it's very challenging. California has a master plan on aging that's in the process of being drafted to help address some of these issues. If you want to get involved, I highly encourage you to look up Master Plan for Aging, and there are ways for stakeholders to become involved in how California's going to assist older adults and disabled adults with long-term care. This is one of the big issues in the Master Plan of Aging. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about the different types of long-term care. So this slide is about the different types of long-term care and the support that's available in each type. And the next slide's about how to pay for these different types of long-term care. Like I said, it's a disintegrated, complicated system. So I'm going to try to break it down for you, but it is pretty complicated. So, we're around for questions at Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center. That's what they're there for, is to help you navigate this complex system. If you need help, don't feel bad, because most people need help with this system. Even people who are professionals in this system need help with this system. So don't be afraid to ask for help. It's wonderful when you ask for help because it helps you advocate for the person that you're caring for. So the first place where long-term care occurs is at home. No one ever says, I want to get old and go into a nursing home, right? Most people want to stay at home as long as they can. And to get long-term care at home, there are many different ways to have that need met. So usually the first way to meet the need for long-term care are family volunteers if they're available. So a family member may come in and care for a loved one who needs care. Family volunteers are volunteers. They're not paid generally, although they can be paid through the in-home supportive services system. That's the next dot there, paid caregivers. So either private pay or through Medi-Cal or other options, which I'm going to talk about. Another way to get support when someone's getting long-term care at home is through daycare programs. They're called adult day health care. It's kind of like a child care program, but it's for adults. Sometimes it's just a social program where the person will go to a day center and there'll be activities and lunch. There's also adult day health care programs that are medical programs, and they have a nurse on staff. They maybe have physical therapists on staff that can provide care while the individual's at the facility. There's also social services activities, lunch at the daycare centers. So a lot of my clients have a family caregiver taking care of them, and a family may live with them and provide services, but the person will go to the daycare center during the day, and that gives the family member some respite, some time to get things done for themselves, time to work. So those are ways to help. That's one way to get care at home by going to an adult day health care. Respite care is care to give the normal caregiver a break. So there are private grants for respite care. You can hire someone to provide respite care. Home health care is when a skilled person, skilled care comes to the home. So I talked about physical therapy. If someone's at a facility, they need PT. Then they go home. The physical therapist can go to the home too. And people can get home health care. There's home health care nurses that come for all kinds of things, to give insulin, check blood pressure, all kinds of things. So home health care is a good option. Hospice care is end-of-life care. When someone has 6 months or less to live, they can enroll in hospice care, and that provides some other services at the home. And case management. There are case managers through health insurance companies or Medi-Cal that provide case management to help coordinate all these services. Because as you can see, there's lots of different providers that can be coming into the home to provide long-term care. And it's complicated, so it's nice to have a case manager to help coordinate the different services. So those are some different services for when someone's at home to help provide for the long-term care at home. The next category is assisted living. Sometimes these are called retirement homes, Alzheimer's board and care homes, small board and cares. These are not medical facilities. These are like more social facilities where someone receives care. These facilities are licensed by the Department of Social Services. Okay, so there's no medical staff, there's no nurses on staff, there's no doctors on staff, there's no LVNs on staff. They may have unskilled attendants, caregivers, paid caregivers on staff, they probably do, but they're not going to provide any kind of medical care like giving insulin as part of that in an assisted living. Although people can get that kind of care at an assisted living by having an outside source come in. Assisted livings are, well, let me go back. So the small board and care, they're called six packs, which is just a weird name, but those are homes. Usually it's a single family home where there are many people being cared for. Assisted livings provide like housekeeping services, they provide meals for somebody. They usually have I'm sure they have someone on staff 24 hours if someone falls or needs assistance going to the bathroom. That's more of a custodial care situation at an assisted living, although there can be higher levels of care at an assisted living. When someone goes to an assisted living, usually you're given a base price for custodial care, and then if you need more care, they will charge more for higher levels of care or medical care provided at the assisted living. And it just depends on the assisted living as to what kind of care someone can be given in the assisted living. So it's really, up to you to check out what kinds of levels of care someone needs, because if they may go in needing limited care, maybe just they have some memory problems, they need help with the cooking and the cleaning, but otherwise they're independent. And if their illness progresses and they get worse, will they be able to stay in that assisted living? Or if they need a higher level of care, they're going to have to move somewhere else. That's one thing to look into when you're looking at assisted livings for someone. The next level of care is a nursing home. So a nursing home is a medical facility. They're also called convalescent homes or rehabilitation centers. Some of them have Alzheimer's units, and they do provide long-term care for people. People can stay there for years. These are licensed by the Department of Healthcare Services. And then the highest level of care is hospitals. That's for acute care, for short-term care. And then if someone has an acute incident, a medical incident, and they're in a hospital, then they could be moved from the hospital to a convalescent or rehab facility and then home. So you can see these different levels of care. People can go back and forth between them. So I have a client and she's at home, she's doing okay, she needs some custodial care, her family's been helping her out. And she has an incident, maybe a heart attack. She goes to the hospital for acute care, and then they discharge her to a rehab facility to do rehabilitation so she can regain some of the whatever she's lost, maybe trouble walking or strength, and then she be sent back home. So you can go back and forth between these different places. Next slide. So Now, how do you pay for these different places? This is the most challenging part of the equation. And again, there's no simple answers. So for home care, there's family volunteers. We talked about that. Many people private pay for home care, for custodial care. Medi-Cal does pay for home care through the in-home supportive services. The in-home supportive services is a Medi-Cal program. It pays for up to 283 hours a month of care based on the in-home supportive services assessment. So it just depends what they assess the individual. Medicare pays for home care, but it's only skilled care. So we talked about skilled care at the beginning, only for medical care at home. If someone's lucky enough to have long-term care insurance, that also pays for home care. And there's also a great benefit called Veterans Aid and Attendance Benefit. It's for veterans or spouses of veterans when they need home care. This gives the person a monthly stipend for home care. So they actually get money for home care and the person decides how they want to spend it. Assisted livings, how are they paid for? Private pay, mostly assisted livings are private pay, so you pay out of your pocket for that. There is a Medi-Cal program called the Assisted Living Waiver, and some people can get assisted livings paid for by this special waiver. There's a limit on how many people in Los Angeles County can be on this waiver, and there's currently a wait list. I think it's about a year, it may be more, to get Medi-Cal to pay for care in an assisted living. If someone has long-term care insurance, that may pay for the assisted living. It depends on the long-term care insurance contract. And Veterans Aid and Attendance Benefit can help pay for care in an assisted living as well. For nursing homes, private pay, Medi-Cal pays for care in a nursing home. That's a reason a lot of people want to get on Medi-Cal, to pay for long-term care in a nursing home. Medicare does pay for care in a nursing home, but it only pays for up to 100 days, and we'll talk about that in a later slide. Private health insurance will often pay for care in a nursing home or rehab facility, and there's also a limited amount of days for that. And long-term care insurance will also usually pay for care in a nursing home for a limited amount of days. And for the hospital, Medi-Cal, Medicare, and private health insurance or private pay all will pay for the care in a hospital. Next slide. So these are the different payment systems. I've mentioned all of them. I want to go a little bit deeper into the different ways that these programs work. Next slide, please. So Medicare, the myth and then reality. Okay. Everyone's heard about Medicare, and they know it's health insurance, but people are sometimes a little fuzzy on the details. So just want to tell you some of the basic details about the Medicare program. So in order to get Medicare, you have had to pay into the Medicare system, into Social Security, either you or your spouse. So Medicare is linked to somebody's work, and it's linked to the Social Security or your spouse's Social Security. Medicare starts at age 65 or 2 years after a Social Security disability determination. So if I'm 50 years old and I become disabled and I apply for Social Security disability because I can no longer work, and I've paid into Social Security for 30 years for my work history. So Social Security states that I am disabled. Okay? They start giving me Social Security benefits based on my work history because I'm disabled and I can no longer work. They approve me at age 50, January when I turn 50. That's just when I applied. That's when my disability started. That's when I'm approved. I have to wait 2 years until I'm 52 in order for my Medicare to start. So there's a 2-year gap in my disability onset until I can actually get my Medicare benefits. Also, Medicare only pays for acute care or skilled care in a rehab, not custodial care. So what that means, in a nursing home, many people think, oh, Medicare pays for 100 days. So if I go to a nursing home, I'm covered for 100 days. Okay, people just hear the 100 days, but that's not how it works. Medicare will pay up to 100 days of care in a rehab hospital or nursing home per benefit period. So up to 100 days. What that really means is Medicare only pays for the time that the person needs skilled nursing care. Once someone doesn't need skilled nursing care anymore, they only need custodial care, Medicare stops paying. Okay? It doesn't mean the person doesn't need care anymore when they stop paying. It just means, according to Medicare, or the doctor actually, the person no longer needs skilled care and Medicare stops paying for it. So this is often a disconnect between people. So someone will have a stroke, go to the hospital, be discharged to the nursing home. And the family thinks, oh, Medicare will pay for 100 days. We're okay for 100 days. We're going to figure out, what to do when mom comes home. We have 100 days. Okay, that is not true. Most of the time, Medicare pays for an average of only 14 days in a nursing home. That's the average, 14 days, not 100 days. So what Medicare will do is the facility will send a letter to the patient. Medicare will stop paying in 5 days. At that time, either you can private pay on your own to stay here, or you can leave, or you could apply for Medi-Cal. That would be the other option, because Medi-Cal will continue to pay for care in a nursing home under custodial care. When someone doesn't need skilled care anymore, Medi-Cal will then come in and continue to pay when that person needs custodial care. Many, many people are in nursing homes long-term using Medi-Cal custodial care. Next slide. Okay, so Medi-Cal. Let's talk a little bit more about Medi-Cal. So Medi-Cal is a public benefit for people that are low income and have low assets. What is low income? For people who have Medicare, there is no income limit to someone's income. So there's no cap on income. If someone has Medicare, they can have any income amount and still qualify for Medi-Cal. They may have a monthly share of costs, which is like a deductible if their income's high, but they could still qualify for Medi-Cal. What Medi-Cal does look at are someone's assets, countable assets. So Medi-Cal does not count your home as an asset. Okay, that's exempt, is not counted at all. But generally, you have to be pretty low asset to qualify for Medi-Cal. If someone's a single individual and they have Medicare, to qualify for Medi-Cal, their assets have to be under $2,000. They're countable assets. And for a married couple, their countable assets have to be under $3,000 to qualify for Medi-Cal. Again, the home's not counted. Retirement accounts may not be counted depending on their account. There is also a very special Medi-Cal program for married couples where one person needs nursing facility level care, meaning they need help with their activities of daily living. They don't have to be in a nursing home. They just need to have they need assistance with like bathing and dressing, grooming, some of their activities of daily living. They can qualify. So there's a special Medi-Cal program for married couples where one person needs nursing facility level care but wants to stay at home. This special program, the married couple can have up to $130,000 plus some little change in countable assets. So I just told you to qualify for Medi-Cal, married couples have to have under $3,000 in assets. except there's this big asterisk exception for married couples where one person needs care. They can have up to $130,000 in assets. So many people have contacted Medi-Cal and been incorrectly told they don't qualify because their assets are over $3,000. So I want to let you know there is this program. You can have more than that. If you have questions, give me a call about that. Okay, Medi-Cal generally does not pay for an assisted living, except for this special program called the Assisted Living Waiver Program. The Assisted Living Waiver Program, like I said, there's a wait list for this program. But if you qualify for Medi-Cal with no share of cost, you can get on the wait list. And then once you're accepted and your slot comes up, you're accepted into the assisted living waiver, then you have to find an assisted living that accepts the waiver and that has an opening and that meets your level of care. So there are a bunch of hoops to jump through to access the assisted living waiver program, but it is possible. And then it will pay for a very high level of care in an assisted living. The other nice thing about the Medi-Cal Assisted Living Waiver Program is when someone's in it, they get their own room. So if someone goes to a nursing home using Medi-Cal, they will be in a shared room, and there may be more than 1 or 2 or 3 people in that room. But if somebody's in the assisted living waiver program and Medi-Cal's paying for that, then they get their own room, which is really nice. Medi-Cal will pay for care in a nursing home, unlimited amount of time. So that's many people, when their care needs get very high, they end up in a nursing home using Medi-Cal for payment. Let's see. Medi-Cal pays for home care through the in-home supportive services program. And there are also other Medi-Cal programs that help provide long-term care for someone living in their home. There's one called the Home and Community-Based Alternative Waiver that can pay for additional home care on top of in-home supportive services hours. There's case management program through Medi-Cal called the Multi-Purpose Senior Services Program, which provides free case management for someone on Medi-Cal. There's the adult daycare program called the Community-Based Adult Services Program. It pays for adult day health care. So Medi-Cal is a very good program for someone who's home and is trying to get the care they need for long-term care at home. Unfortunately, single individuals need to be very low asset to qualify for Medi-Cal. And a lot of what we do at BetSatic is we meet with clients and discuss their income and assets and figure out if there's ways for them to qualify for Medi-Cal if that's what they need to do. Next slide. Oh, look, I just gave you all this information. I forgot it was on the next slide. So now you have it on the slide. So Medi-Cal, like I said, there's no income limit, but someone may have a share of cost. And these are the asset limits that I discussed earlier. Like I said, the home is exempt. The way it works with Medi-Cal is you can own your own home that you live in. Or if you don't live in it, let's say you own a home, but you moved in with your daughter to help with your care needs, the home is still exempt. It's not counted. So you can have one home. It's not counted. Medi-Cal keeps track of the money that they spend on you for certain services. And after you pass away, they may make a claim against your estate, which is your home, and ask for the money back. However, Medi-Cal may only make a claim against homes or estates that go through the court probate process. So the way to avoid a Medi-Cal recovery claim is to avoid the court probate process. So if your home is in a living trust, the home does not go through probate and there will be no Medi-Cal recovery claim. That's the easiest way to, well, not the easiest way, that's probably the best way to avoid Medi-Cal recovery claims, but there are other ways to avoid Medi-Cal recovery claims. And you can contact any Medi-Cal planning attorney and they can discuss ways to avoid Medi-Cal recovery claims. I know some people are worried about going on Medi-Cal because of Medi-Cal recovery, but there are ways to avoid that. Also, if you're a caregiver and you were caring for somebody for more than 2 years and you kept them out of a nursing home for 2 years or more, then the Medi-Cal recovery claim for that caregiver will be waived, because what the caregiver do? They help the state, they help provide free services, and the state will waive that caregiver's claim if they were going to inherit the house. Will waive that part of the recovery claim. Next slide. So what are you looking at for private pay? Let's say you're not on Medi-Cal, you need long-term care. How much does it cost? Okay, long-term care is very expensive private pay. Home chore workers hired privately start at $15 an hour. $15 is what in-home supportive services pays the providers, the IHSS providers. 15 to 20, and it just goes up from there. You can privately hire somebody. You can go through an agency and hire somebody as a home chore worker. Agency workers are more expensive than someone hired privately. Daycares, adult daycares, cost $75 to $150 a day. Many of them have sliding scale options for people who can't afford that. I know sometimes LACRC or other agencies have grants for daycare. And like I said, Medi-Cal does cover adult day health care. But that's expensive if you don't have coverage through Medi-Cal. Assisted livings. I put they run about $4,500 a month and up. I mean, you can get an assisted living for maybe $2,000 to $3,000 in a small boarding care, but usually they're about $4,500 and up. There are assisted living, what do they call it? Assisted living agencies. Like they're like brokers. They help you find an assisted living, and they get paid by where you decide to go to, so they're free. So if you're looking for an assisted living, sometimes they're helpful. If you have a budget, they can tell you, find you facilities within your budget and your care needs and help match you up. And nursing homes run $10,298 a month. I got that number from what Medi-Cal pays a nursing home. That's the average Medi-Cal private pay rate. So that's the Medi-Cal negotiated rate for a nursing home, $10,298 a month. So nursing home cost is very expensive. Next slide. So we just went over the different levels of care, where you can get care, and who pays for care. I want to kind of pivot a little bit and talk about paid family leave. Many caregivers are not aware of this program. So I just want to let you know that California has a wonderful program that pays employees who take time off to care for a family member. So if you pay into unemployment for yourself, you are eligible for paid family leave. It's to pay you while you're caring for a seriously ill child, parent, parent-in-law, grandparent, grandchild, sibling, spouse, or registered domestic partner. And it provides up to 8 weeks of paid leave. The way you access this benefit is you file for it through EDD like you would for unemployment. There's a option there for paid family leave. You can take paid family leave, for 8 weeks straight. You could take it for, 3 weeks here and 3 weeks there. I know a lot of families do that. You can even take it for half days if you need to take a family member to the doctor or something like that. So it's a great benefit that's underutilized. Be aware it's available to you. Next slide. I always get questions about long-term care insurance. So I did want to mention it. Long-term care insurance is insurance that somebody pays for in the event that they need long-term care, if they need long-term care, then the insurance will pay for care based on the policy, whatever your policy is. So it's good for asset protection. There's often a high monthly premium for long-term care insurance. You can only get long-term care insurance if you don't need it. Okay, if you need long-term care insurance, you cannot buy it. So you have to buy it in advance. The older you get, the more expensive the premiums are going to be. It's my understanding, I'm not an insurance broker, but it's my understanding that the premiums levels can be raised at any time unless it's through a certain contract. So sometimes premiums go up a lot and then people can no longer afford the long-term care insurance. The best policies have inflation protection, as to what they'll pay for home care or nursing home care. So it's nice if you can afford it. It certainly relieves your family of stress should you need long-term care, because many family members end up taking care of someone. So if they have long-term care, that insurance will pay for care and it's not delegated to the family members, at least not all of it. So next slide. Who decides care? Thank you. Who decides care? This is a kind of a gray area. Ultimately, the patient should decide care, but if the patient is unable to decide what their care needs are or give input, then the patient's surrogates may also decide. If there's a advance directive signed by the patient outlining who their agent is to decide care, if they can no longer make decisions, that person would step in. A conservator, which is a court-appointed individual, appointed by the court to make decisions for someone who's incapacitated, the conservator can decide on medical care or where the person lives. But most of the time, people haven't completed advance directives, there's no conservator, and it's really up to the family members to decide care needs if someone's incapacitated. Doctors don't decide care, but they advise as to what the care needs could be, and what the next possible options are. But ultimately, it's up to the patient and the family member to decide on care needs. Next slide. Working with a physician, when we're talking about long-term care, it gets a little complicated because physicians usually just provide acute care, right? Someone has a problem, they go to the doctor tries to solve that problem, or the doctor assists with some kind of long-term illness or problem. But the doctor's really not in the home, right? The doctor doesn't see what the individual needs when they're bathing, the assistance that they need in order to get a bath or in order to walk to the kitchen, or doesn't see whether or not the person can make their own meals or how challenging it is for the person to shop, right? So the physician's office, they can educate about possible long-term care needs, but often the best person, if you can find someone in the physician's office, a social worker or a geriatric care manager, those are the people that can connect you to community resources to help figure out how to address long-term care needs. Working with support groups, hopefully you're in a support group or you're connecting with LACRC or Alzheimer's LA to help get the support that you need to help provide for long-term care. It's really all about teamwork. I wrote this on the bottom of the slide. No one can do it by themselves. Providing long-term care for an individual is very challenging, and you need a team in order to best address that person's need and as a caregiver to support you. Next slide. I know I gave you a lot of information, and because we never know how someone's condition is going to change or progress, it's hard to make decisions ahead of time. But really, when you're thinking about long-term care, part of what you have to think about is, what kind of decisions would this person want? Or talk to your loved one about, do they want to stay at home? If so, how can they afford to stay at home? Can they afford private care? Have they paid into long-term care insurance? Can they consider long-term care insurance? If they wanted to go to an assisted living, does it want to be, where do they want to go? Near a child? Stay in their community? These are conversations to have hopefully ahead of time, although most of us don't. We have these conversations when the situation happens to us because we never know if it's going to happen. We hope it doesn't. And then once it happens, then you're stuck in the middle of it. But these are all considerations in how to get care. And financial, honestly, is one of the number one considerations to determine where they can get the care and who provides the care, and what the future care needs are and how they're met. Next slide. So if you go to our website, we have 4 booklets in our caregiver series. We have the Caregiver Companion, which talks about getting care for someone at home. The Assisted Living Companion talks about how to get care in an assisted living and how to pay for that care. And the Nursing Home Companion talks about getting good care in a nursing home and how to pay for that. And finally, the IHSS Companions about in-home supportive services and how to maximize hours. We have these booklets are all in English and Spanish on our website and some other languages as well in some of the copies. And they're all free, so please check them out. They each go over what I talked about today in more detail, and you can read them at your leisure or send them to people that you think may find them helpful. They're all downloadable, so I hope you take advantage of that resource. Next slide. Then here are some other resources. The Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center, I'm sure you're aware of because that's why you're here. Alzheimer's LA is a good resource. There's our main phone number, Betzetic Legal Services. There's a great webpage called benefitscheckup.org. That's for California, and you can see if you're eligible for certain public benefits. And California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform have a lot of information about Medi-Cal for long-term care, how to find a good nursing home and assisted living, and residents' rights when they're living in nursing home and assisted living. So those are our wonderful resources, and they're all free. Next slide. So I know we don't have any questions available today, but you're welcome to call me or email me if you have questions. This is my contact information. It's just me and Gail Tamler, an attorney in our office. We work together in our unit, and we serve the whole county of Los Angeles. So contact us. It may take us a while to get back to you, but I promise we will get back to you if you leave a message or send an email. If you do send an email, please put your phone number in the email because we'll probably call you because we'll always want more information from you. So I hope that you've learned something useful today when caring for a loved one. I know how challenging it is. I've been through it with my family, like I said, with my grandmother with Alzheimer's disease. And it's, it's a lot. It's a lot. And just know that we are here to help you. And there are a lot of wonderful community resources to help you navigate this complex problem of long-term care. So I appreciate your attention today, and I look forward to speaking with you in the future.
Thank you, Kim, for that informative presentation. You were completely right when you said caregiving is all about teamwork. That's what we call the care team when we, talk about how can you set up a support system, right? So providing long-term care for a loved one is really, really challenging. It's in many times very intimidating. And there is no right or wrong answer, especially when we're talking about levels of care and financial options, right? These things all differ from family to family, from situation to situation. And navigating the different levels of care and the different financial options that are available to you may feel really, really daunting, overwhelming, intimidating, right? Especially when we want our loved one to be given the best care possible. However, by being part of a care team, like what we talked about earlier, and really working together to try to figure out what are some viable options for us. Utilizing the resources, the community resources that are available to us, we can best address our loved ones' needs as well as feel supported as a family caregiver. And finally, for our final presentation of the day, we are pleased to welcome Yarelis Talavera, who is from the Center for Financial Empowerment. It is a division within the LA County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. She will be talking about the details of financial empowerment for older adults, such as common money problems, basic money management skills, and identifying warning signs of scams or perhaps some financial situations that you want to be aware of, and also some key tools to help you with your finances. So, thank you for joining us today, Yarelis, and take it away.
Good afternoon. My name is Yarelis Talavera, and I'm with the Center for Financial Empowerment, which is housed in the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. And today we're going to be covering common money problems, basic management skills, identifying some warning signs, and some key tools and resources to help you manage your finances. Next slide. So a little bit about our department. Our department has been around for quite some time, since the late 1970s, and our mission is to promote a fair and vibrant marketplace to all of LA County residents. That includes consumers and businesses alike, and we do that through education, advocacy, and complaint resolution. On the next slide, we're going to be looking at the different types of divisions and programs that, or services that our department provides. So we have four main divisions. Under the consumer protection here, we have a group of counselors that can provide you information on any consumer, almost every consumer question that you may have. Maybe you purchase something at a store and you're wondering whether you can return it, what the return or exchange policy is for the store or for the state. We can definitely give you information on that. We also investigate cases. So there's cases that have to do with real estate fraud as well as immigration fraud. We definitely look into all of those things. Our counselors, they're there to, walk you through the process of what it would take to try to resolve the issue that you're having. In some cases, your issue may require a little bit more than counseling, but not enough for an investigation. So we'll go ahead and offer you mediation. All of our services are free. Mediation does require that at least two parties participate in trying to, resolve the issue. There's times when maybe one of the parties doesn't want to do a mediation, or maybe, in the middle of a mediation, they decide that they don't want to continue with the mediation. So a mediator will then, suggest other options to try to resolve your issue. But for the most part, most issues do get resolved through mediation, where you can talk about what the problem is and, and work it from there. In case that your issue isn't resolved in mediation and you want to try to sue in small claims court, we have small claims advisors that can help you through that. You can sue up to $10,000 in small claims. Again, not all of the issues can go to small claims, but it does depend. And we have advisors that can walk you through the process, what forms, fees you must pay, and also how to collect whatever it is that you win, what we call a judgment. We also have our wage enforcement unit. Here we enforce the minimum wage in the unincorporated area of LA County, and we also help the city of Santa Monica. So if you feel that you are not getting paid what the minimum wage is in the area that you work in, our wage enforcement unit can look into those types of complaints to try to see what the issue is. And there's cases that we are able to get back whatever money is owed to the employee. Under economic development, we have our foreclosure prevention unit. We help homeowners who are struggling to make their mortgage payment, who may be in the process of foreclosure. We connect them, we try to connect them with their lender and trying to see what assistance is available for them at the moment. Especially during this time, if you haven't heard, there is a mortgage relief program that is helping homeowners who have fallen behind in trying to get them to work with their lenders and also to qualify for some financial assistance. We also have the Small Business Services Unit here. Our Office of Small Business helps those who are interested in starting a business with the concierge program. They walk you through the process of what forms, maybe licenses or permits you may need for you to start your business. Also, if you already have your business, we can help you get started in selling your products or service to LA County, so we can help you get registered as a vendor and get certified with our different programs. And under our housing, we have the rent stabilization. So this unit enforces the rent stabilization ordinance in the unincorporated area of LA County. So if you don't already know, the entire state of California is a rent stabilization state. So that means that there is a cap as to how much a landlord can increase your rent, and there's additional protections, especially for evictions. So we enforce the rent stabilization ordinance for the unincorporated area of LA County. Under the Immigrant Affairs, we have the Office of Immigrant Affairs, who provides information and assistance to the immigrant community, whether it be undocumented residents or naturalized citizens. We provide them with their rights or responsibilities and additional information that they may need during, this, especially during this time. And under the economic development, going back to the Center for Financial Empowerment, on our next slide, the Center for Financial Empowerment has been around for a few years now. We started as a pilot program and became permanent in 2019. And the mission of the Center for Financial Empowerment is to convene and advocate and in trying to build, to strengthen the financial health of our community, specifically for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We do this through capacity building and training. So we provide trainings to nonprofit organizations that are, financial counselors or financial coaches to help their clients, succeed in what their financial goals are. We also do through asset building, which we do a lot of education and outreach. We provide presentations to the community on the foundation of, finances. So what we're going to be talking about today. Next slide, please. So here's the agenda for today. We're going to be talking about, what to do when you don't have enough money, how to deal with debt, building and maintaining a healthy credit and credit score, avoiding high cost financial products, and also how to reach out for assistance. What resources and tools are out there for you whenever you need help. Next slide. So not having enough money. So here we're going to be talking about prioritizing bills, budgeting, and increasing income. Next slide. So when we look at prioritizing bills, so let's say that you're in a situation where you only have a certain amount of money coming in every month. And a lot of people experience this, this last year where either they were losing their job or, hours were reduced or only receiving, maybe they qualify for unemployment benefits. So it was for them is trying to figure out what is it that I pay first. So here is something from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that can kind of help you decide what is it that you want to pay first. So the first thing that they talk about is protecting your income. So meaning if you still have a job, you might want to protect that first. So if you have a car and you need your car to get to your job, or maybe you use your car for your job. Maybe you are doing a lot of these delivery services and you have to rely on your car to get, your income to be able to make it, for the month. You want to make sure that you're staying on top of your payment, which also includes any insurance payments as well. Second thing would be, protecting your shelter. I know a lot of people, unfortunately, were not able to make their rent payments, and there's been eviction moratoriums, and it has been extended, and there's additional programs out there. But when there isn't that assistance, or whenever you find yourself losing a job or hours are being reduced, think about your shelter. before you start paying any other bills. You want to make sure that you're housed, you're not homeless, that you and your family are safe. So you also want to make sure that you're paying any utility bills as well. The next thing would be, the third thing that the CFPB recommends on the next slide is paying for your obligations. So these are things that might be that maybe you have a court order that you have to pay. It could be, child support. It may be credit card debt or anything like that. So, again, this is one of the things that you may say, well, that's not important to me. So again, prioritizing these bills is all up to you, but this is some examples of how you can. And the next thing would be protecting your assets and your health. So meaning, if you need your car for work, you want to make sure that you are paying the insurance or the car payment on there. Make sure that your health is covered. So if you're paying any insurance for health insurance, make sure that you're also covering that. Okay. On the next slide, we're going to be talking about paying the bills and other expenses. So here you have to determine what is a need, what is an obligation, and what is a want. A need and a want for everyone is different. So the needs, as simple as, are the things that you must have to live. That could be food, that could be shelter, that could be a car to get to work. A want are things that you like, but are not actually needed for you to survive. Okay, so, but because everyone's situation is different, someone's need may be someone's want, and someone's want may be someone's need. So it's a good idea for you to sit down and just kind of go over what are the things that you consider to be a need and also consider to be a want. And that way you can determine, what bills and other expenses you should be paying off. Next slide. So one thing on, determining your prioritizing and managing, figuring out what bills you're going to pay comes down to, managing your money. So you want to know exactly how much money is coming in. So this is where you want to track your sources of income. So you might have a full-time job. Maybe you're receiving, unemployment benefits. Maybe you have a little side business or a side gig. You want to make sure that you know exactly where all of your income is coming from. Once you do that, the next thing that you want to do is use what's called a bill calendar, or just have look at the calendar and put down where when your bills are due. So you want to make sure that your bills are due when you have money coming in, because let's say that you have all of your bills are due on the first few weeks of the month, but you don't get paid until maybe the second or last week of the month. So here you're going to be, unfortunately, maybe start making late payments because your due dates do not match up with when your income is coming in. So it's a good idea to kind of see in the big picture when your bills are due. The other thing would be tracking and analyzing your spending. So if you don't already do this, it would be a good idea for maybe about a month or so, to track where your money is going. And the reason for this is that you want to see where your money is actually going. Where are you spending your money? Where is it spending the most? Are there places where you may need to cut down on? So this is definitely a good idea for you to then create a budget. And a budget could be as simple as you writing it down, or maybe using some sort of an app, or maybe through your bank. They offer ways to create a budget. But the budget shouldn't be something that restricts you from spending. The budget just gives you an overview of what money's coming in, how money is being spent, and it gives you the sense of control over your money, because the point here is for you to have control over your money. You're telling your money, you're going, $5 bill, you're going here, $10 bill, you're getting, you're spending that money over here, or $100 bill, you're getting, you're going to be spent over here. You don't want your money to be controlling you. So you want to make sure that you know exactly where your money is going, because that's when you start, seeing exactly, do I have to cut down on certain things? Do I have enough money to save up? And if you are looking at your budget and you find that you do have to cut down, some ways to cut down expenses may be, canceling cable, start using some streaming services. Maybe you don't need all 5 or 10 different streaming services. Maybe you just need one. Another way may be start buying generic brand instead of the brand name. Some people like that, some people don't. So again, it's up to you, but finding ways to cut these expenses may definitely help you manage your money and eventually be able to reach some goals. Another way is finding ways to increase your income. So maybe you already have a full-time job, or maybe it is finding a part-time job, a second job, or maybe it's time for you to start that business that you always wanted to start. Or maybe it's like a side gig. These side gigs are very popular, and a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, a lot of people started these little side gigs, side hustles, and they have 200, 300, 500, whatever it is monthly money coming in, which is helping them. Other ways to find to increase money could be, do you have things that you want to sell? Maybe you're not using them anymore online, maybe hosting a yard sale. So it's finding ways to increase your income. And another one could be asking for a raise if you already have a full-time job and you don't have time to get a second job. And the next thing would be setting financial goals. So on the next slide, we're going to see how to set or create what's called SMART goal setting. And these SMART goals is SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So here you want to make sure that when you're setting a specific financial goal, the example here is, you want to save up $1,500 in an emergency fund. That's very specific, instead of saying, I just want to save money. Okay, so being very specific will help you determine the rest of the SMART goals. So measurable would mean, how much money do you need to achieve your goal? When will you know that you have achieved your goal? So measure will be, I need $1,500 because that's what I want to save in my emergency fund. Now you can break it down monthly. How much is it that you would have to be saving? The next would be attainable. Is this goal doable? Is it doable for you at this moment? Can you actually reach this goal? Because what you don't want to do is set yourself up for failure. So if you were to say, I wanted to save $5,000 in the next 2 months for an emergency fund, if you see that you're maybe not working enough hours, you're not have enough money coming in, that goal may not be reachable in the next 2 months. So you're going to have to figure out, is this something that I can actually do, that I can actually reach at this moment? And how relevant is it? Is this something that you really want? Is this the right time at the moment? So let's say that you were trying to go on a vacation. So for you is, saving those $1,500 maybe for a vacation. Is it the time for you to go right now? Maybe you think, well, I actually have all this other debt that I have to pay off, and I would really like to pay off that first. So would it be the good time for you to start saving for this vacation if you really wanted to pay off the debt instead? So those are the things that you want to consider. And the last one would be time bound. By what date should this goal be reached? Because if you don't give yourself a due date, most likely you're not going to reach it. So again, be very specific of what it is that you want to achieve. How much money do you have to save? And when should you be achieving this specific goal by? Okay, because that would definitely help you, get to that goal a little bit sooner and a little bit closer. Next slide. So now we're going to be talking about dealing with debt. So on the next slide, we're going to see, who is a debt collector? A debt collector is anybody that you owe money to. So that could be a lender, that could be a bank, a credit card company. It could be a relative or a friend who you borrowed money from. It could be the employer who works for this, lender. It could be a collection agency or a law firm that's representing the organization that is in charge of collecting the debt. Now, when someone calls you in regards to a debt, on the next slide, we're going to see that there are certain things that you should definitely be aware of, what a debt collector can do. So they can definitely contact you at your employer. They cannot, disclose as to why they're calling, what debt you owe. They can't give that information. They can definitely tell you that they're going to sue you if, they've been trying to collect money over a specific period of time. They can definitely contact another person to confirm your location or try to enforce if they already sued you and trying to enforce that judgment. And they can definitely add interest to whatever debt you owe them. Okay, next slide. So what can't they do? Okay, so debt collectors cannot falsely misrepresent themselves, stating that they are an attorney, if in fact they are not an attorney, that there's some sort of government agency, or provide you any false, information or name. They can't tell you that that you're going to be arrested if you don't pay the debt. They cannot. So these are threats. Unfortunately, there's some debt collectors that have threatened people in order to try to get them to pay, but just make sure that you know that they're not allowed to do that. They cannot harass you, and also they cannot be contacting you between the hours of 9 p.m. and 8 a.m. unless you have given them permission to contact you at that time. Next slide. So when a debt collector calls, before you agree to pay, or you say, yes, that is my debt, make sure that you do not acknowledge the debt. Okay, so you want to make sure that you know whether it is your debt or not. And why? Because you want to make sure that, again, do you really owe this debt? And two, does the person that's calling you have the authority to collect on this debt? Because there have been where people call individuals saying, hey, you owe this debt. And that person on that phone ends up to be an identity thief or a scammer. So you want to make sure first that you owe the debt, and two, does this person have the authority to collect? Make sure that you get their name, their phone numbers, the address of the debtor, who is it that they work for, and ask for that information in writing. If for some reason this person is not providing you that information, you can always contact our office and we can help you in trying to obtain that information. Okay, so again, make sure that you are not acknowledging that you owe the debt, and do not agree to pay for the debt if you are not sure if you owe the money or how long you've had that debt for. Okay, next slide. So some ways to get out of debt if you are in debt. One way that that people like to is called the debt snowball method. So here you are, listing all of your debt, and then you're paying off those debts from the smallest to largest balance, and it doesn't matter what the interest rate is for those balances. So here you're just starting off with the smallest to the biggest balance. So what happens is that you are making, let's say, $100 payment on the first debt, and on your rest of the debts that you have, you're making a minimum payment. So once you're done paying your first debt, that $100 now goes onto the second debt, plus that $25 that you were making as a minimum payment. Now you're making a $125 payment on that second debt, and on the rest you're doing that minimum payment, whatever that minimum payment would be for your debts. So this way, you're tackling the smallest debts, and you see a little bit more of victories. A lot of people like that because that kind of motivates them to continue paying off that debt. The second option would be the avalanche method. So here is the opposite. You are actually listing or trying to pay off the debts with the highest interest rate. And it's not based on the balance, it's based on the highest to the smallest interest rate. This method does take a little bit longer, but you're most likely might be saving a little bit more money because you're tackling the interest rate here. So it's up to you which one you use. Again, if you want to see, immediate victories to motivate you, then most likely the snowball method would be for you. If you're okay with longer period of, paying off debt, then most likely the avalanche method would be for you. And on the next slide, we're going to see co-signing. So co-signing can definitely become a debt. So if you co-sign for someone, a friend, a family member, a child, maybe say you co-sign for a car, you want to make sure that you understand that as a co-signer, you are agreeing that in case this person were to default under payment, this debt is also yours. Your credit is also being affected. So you have to be ready to pay that payment in case that person has not paid. Okay, so again, if you're not making the payments, that other person is not making the payments, so both of your credit and your credit scores are being impacted. Next slide. So speaking about credit, here we're going to be looking at why is it important to have a healthy credit score. What does a credit report look like, and why you should be looking and reviewing your credit report often. Next slide. So why is credit important? Obviously, we've seen that having a credit card, or it has come in handy in the last year. It's definitely useful when emergencies arise. It allows you to make large purchases. So think about buying a house or a car. Most people don't have, 25, $30,000 in the bank cash to buy a car, or even a house, four or $500,000 to buy a house in cash. So we are going to rely on our credit to be able to buy those purchases. And the other thing is, it does affect the ability for you to rent an apartment, even buy that house, or even get a job. So credit is a very powerful tool when you use it correctly. And then we're going to see how not using it correctly does affect your credit score and your credit report. Next slide. So your credit report is something that you should definitely be checking at least every 12 months. Okay, you get to, by law, you are required. You get a free credit check every 12 months from each of the three different credit agencies, which are Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Your credit report has a list of all of the different credit that has been given to you or extended to you. So if you have credit cards, so you have a car payment, if you have a mortgage, if you have a personal loan, if you have student loans, other types of credit cards or store cards that act as credit cards, all of that information is in your credit report. This credit report then helps to generate your credit score. So your credit report is one thing, and then your credit score is a separate thing. Next slide. So how do you get your credit report? So if you do online banking, your bank probably provides you with a copy of a credit report. But there are other websites as well. The one that we recommend is annualcreditreport.com. This site only provides you your reports and information on how to maintain and build good credit. It doesn't try to sell you anything. It's free. And like I mentioned, by law, you are able to check your credit report at least every 12 months at each of the credit agencies. What we recommend is that you actually check your credit report at least 3 times during the year. So you can come to this website, click on I want to see my Experian report, the first month of the year. The next 3 or 4 months, you come back to this specific website, and now you click on I want to see my TransUnion report. And then towards the end of the year, you want to come back to this website and click on you want to see your Equifax report. So now the reason for that is that you can see what has been going on all 3 credit reports throughout the year. And the reason for that is because not all of the businesses you have a relationship with are reporting to all 3 credit bureaus. So let's say you have a car payment. Your car payment might be reporting it to Experian and TransUnion, but they're not reporting it to Equifax. So once you look at all 3, they might look a little bit different, but they should definitely have mostly all of the same information, but some may be a little bit, may be different because not all businesses report to all 3 bureaus. So you want to make sure that at least it looks similar, but if there is something under that you feel that shouldn't be on there, or that you say, I never took out this credit card, or I never took out this loan, that's definitely going to be where you will see if you have been a victim of identity theft. So again, by law, you are able to check your credit report at least every 12 months from each of the credit bureaus. But if you come to this website, again, at the beginning of the year, you check with Experian. Towards the middle of the year, check with TransUnion, and then come back at the end of the year and get your Equifax. So now you see all 3. Next slide. In case that you do find something on your credit report that you believe is a mistake, or you believe that you paid it off but it's still showing that you haven't paid it off, or you see loans, credit cards, things on there that you say, this, I never took out this credit, so that might be definitely an indication that you're a victim of identity theft. So you want to make sure that you're disputing all of this information with the credit bureaus, the credit agencies, which are Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Make sure that you're gathering all of your documents. You can start the online dispute online or by phone or mail. Make sure that you are allowing the credit agency to do their investigation. It takes typically 30 days for them to review it. Well, during this time, they will definitely contact the business to make sure if they need additional documents. And keep in mind that when you are disputing any information on your report, the credit agency will definitely remove or pull those accounts that are being disputed from your credit report. So no one will be able to see those accounts. So once those 30 days are up, if for some reason the credit agency believes that they should go back on there, what they believe to be valid, they're going to put them back on there. If whatever they believe is, shouldn't be on there anymore, they're definitely going to be removing them. Okay. Now, you definitely want to make sure that you're disputing all this information, because all the information that is on your credit report, like I mentioned before, generates your credit score. So on the next slide, your credit score is that 3-digit number that lenders use to decide how risky is it to lend you money. Okay, so think about your credit score as your GPA. How well have you been managing your credit, and that is your score. So obviously, the higher your score, the more likely that you are going to be able to pay back that money on time. So lenders are looking to lend you or let you borrow that money. Next slide. So how do you get your credit score? There are different credit scores out there, but the one that is widely used by about 90-92% of lenders is your FICO score. So you may see, if you're doing online banking, probably your bank is providing you a score. Most banks, I believe, they provide you what's called the Vantage score or CreditWise. So this is different from the FICO score. The score shouldn't differ that much, but again, because most lenders are using your FICO score, your FICO score is the one that you should also be looking at to see, what the score is. So you can always go to myfico.com. You do have to pay for your score for the FICO score. Now, the one that your bank is giving you is free. You can always use that one as kind of like a starting point to kind of see where you're at. Okay, next slide. So what is a good credit score? So, the credit score, the way that they calculate credit scores is based on, do you make your payments on time? How much credit are you using? What is your credit mix? Meaning, do you have credit cards, a car note? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have personal loans? How long you have your credit for? So all of that is what helps, make up your credit score. So obviously, most of us want to be up in the 800s, and the way that you get anywhere above the 600s is by making all your payments on time, making sure that you're not maxing out your credit cards or the credit that is available to you. Because once you start using up all your credit available to you, that's an indication to lenders that you or this person is only relying on credit. So again, remember that your credit report, your credit score says to lenders, this is how this person is managing money. So you definitely want to be mindful of that. Next slide. So let's say that you are in a situation where you want to try to rebuild your credit, or you're looking for someone to help you clean up your credit. There's definitely credit repair companies out there. There's good ones, and unfortunately there's some bad actors out there. So these are some of the things that you should definitely look out for if you're looking to hire a credit repair company. If for some reason they tell you that you should not be contacting the credit agencies, that's definitely a warning sign. If they definitely ask you for an advance fee, okay, that is a warning sign, because it is against the law for a credit repair company to ask you for any money in advance before they completed the work. If they don't give you a contract, if they don't explain your rights, or even if they promise you they're going to give you a new credit history, or that they're going to be removing all of the information off your credit report. Okay, so those are the warning signs. Getting a new credit history it's not something that's possible. They can only, or you yourself, this is something that you can do. And when we talked about disputing any of the information on your credit report, the stuff that, the things that are valid will stay on your credit report. Things that are identity theft, then those things will definitely be coming out. Things that you owed and then you paid, they still stay on there for a specific period of time. It's called the statute of limitations. So things will stay on your credit report for, up to maybe 10 years or so, depending on what it is. So if they tell you we're going to remove everything, your credit report is going to be blank, That's not possible. The only people that should have a blank credit report are those who are just turning 18, because underage you're not able to get any type of credit. So again, make sure that if you are looking for a credit repair company, that you're looking out for these warning signs, okay? Because once you pay them the money and they don't do anything, it's very difficult to try to recover this money back, because usually they disappear, they move, or they actually never had an office, so it's very difficult to try to recover that money. Next slide. So how to maintain, your credit, building or rebuilding and having a healthy score. So, building credit, let's say that you're just starting off with credit, and you don't have a credit card, you don't have any loans. One way to build credit without a credit card is by obtaining a secure credit card. They look like credit cards, they kind of work the same way. The only difference is that whatever bank you go to, they're going to ask you to put down a secure deposit. So that deposit could be $200, $300, $500. So whatever that deposit is, that deposit then becomes your credit limit. So that means that you can only use up that credit card or that secure credit card up to that deposit, those $300, $500. You make your payments on time, they're reporting it to the credit agencies. If you're not making your payments on time, they also report it to the credit agencies. And after a certain period of time, usually after a year, you can graduate, or they graduate you to a credit report. To a regular credit card. Maybe a way is for you to ask for help from family and friends, is that co-signing. So maybe they can co-sign in getting a car, maybe a loan or a credit card. And again, as co-signers, you want to make sure that you know that you are responsible to pay that debt in case that person doesn't pay for it. Participating in lending circles, that is something that, there is a group of people that get together that, put in money every month or so. And now you're able to use that money. And I'll talk about it in a little bit more in detail. How to rebuild credit: paying your bills on time, making sure that you're not using more than that 30% of your available credit. Again, because if you're maxing out your credit cards or maxing out all the credit that you have available, that's not a good indication to lenders. Make sure that you're not closing accounts that that maybe you haven't used for a while, because that does affect your credit score. So if you're not using them, that's fine. There are cases where the lender will close them out for you. So you also want to keep that in mind, because as soon as you start paying off balances, closing accounts, you should notice that your credit score will be going up and down. It kind of goes like a roller coaster. So, again, another way is maintaining a good mix of your active credit trade lines, meaning, do you have a credit card? Do you have a personal loan? Do you have, a car note? Not saying that you should go and get that out, but once you start getting credit, those are some of the things you want to think about. And another thing is, should have at least 6 months of good credit history and activity before you start applying for additional credit, because lenders want to see how you've been managing your money. And in case that you do have debt, think about putting a plan together, or can you do the avalanche or the snowball method, or also reach out to some organizations that can help you negotiate some debt or put a plan together to get out of debt. Next slide. And back to lending circles. So here we talk about safe alternative credit building products. So here, like I mentioned, lending circles is where a group of people get together, and they put money into a pot, let's just say. This type of lending has been around for quite some time, and there's an organization called Mission Asset Fund that provides this type of program. So these are loans that have no interest or fees, and whatever you're making those payments on time or not on time, they're reporting it to the credit agencies. So they're helping you build credit without actually having to go through a bank or a credit union and trying to, if you're being declined because you don't have enough credit history. So lending circles are an option. Next slide. Now we're going to be talking about avoiding those high cost products and alternative financial services. So we're going to talk about payday loans and some other check cashing establishments. Next slide. So what are these high cost loans? So these are loan products that, usually have high fees. And some of the things that you can look at to see if they're a high cost product is, they don't look at the ability of someone that's borrowing the money, can they necessarily pay this back? They don't take that into consideration. So they're not looking to see how much income this person has coming in. The default rates are really high, and usually they want you to pay back these loans in a short period of time. Maybe, typically some of them up to 30 days, some could be within a week or 2 weeks. They have really high annual percentage rates, and a lot of their fees, they charge you extra fees for certain different things. So those are the things that you want to look at when you're trying to determine, is this a high cost product? Next slide. So some examples here are your check cashing stores, prepaid debit cards, card title loans, payday loans, pawn shop loans, rent to own, instant tax refunds, and buy here, pay here dealerships. So, think about when you're going to buy a car, you go to a lot, you are, they're the ones who are financing you, and then you are making the payment directly to them. So those are types of, high cost financial products. We're going to look at, on the next slide, we're going to look at payday lenders. So these payday lenders, I'm sure you see them almost in every single corner. They make it very, very easy for someone to get a loan. And again, it's because they're not looking to see if the person that's coming in has any income, or even how will they be able to pay back this money. These loans are short-term loans, so it might be maybe a 2-week period. It could be up to a month that you're going to need this money, and they give you a month to pay it back. They have very high interest rates. There's multiple fees for different things. So if you're paying cash, they're most likely going to charge you a fee. If you're paying it late, they're going to charge you a fee. There's places that even if you try to make a payment over the phone, they charge you a fee. So you definitely want to make sure that you are thinking about this if you're in a situation where you don't have enough money coming in, or you're behind on bills, and I'm sure a lot of people during the last year had to get some sort of payday lender or loan because they didn't have enough money coming in. If that is the case for you, you just want to make sure that that there's going to be additional fees, and these are going to be very high fees for you to pay back this loan. And unfortunately, a lot of people get into a cycle of repeating, of getting these loans every few weeks, because they're not able to pay them, so they renew the loan. Okay, so you definitely want to make sure that you're looking at this, and this is why it's very important for you to start managing your money, making sure that you have a budget, making sure that you know exactly how much money is coming in, and if you need additional money, what else can you do before you even go to a payday lender. Next slide. So the the check cashing is the one that you go to a a check cashing establishment, and they charge you for different fees. So again, the whole point here is for you to keep most of your money and not pay someone else to cash your check. So you see the example here. You get your paycheck $1,000. You're paying 3%. That's $30 every time you cash your check. And by the end of the year, if you're going there twice a month every year, or the month, you're paying $780 just to get your money. So again, you want to make sure that you're keeping most of your money. Next slide. And, just to kind of give you some perspective, it's $53.3 billion is how much Americans pay to these check cashing establishments. So again, you want to make sure that you're keeping most of your money, and by doing that, you're able to at least save some money, or reach some different type of financial goals. Next slide. So instead of using those dangerous or excessive services, this is why we talk about having a healthy relationship with a bank, having some sort of a bank account with a bank or a credit union or some sort of financial institution, because a lot of these financial institutions can definitely provide you additional products that can help you safeguard your money, or grow your assets, and build credit for yourself. Next slide. If you're looking for a bank account, if for some reason you don't have good credit, or you have been put on check systems, meaning that for some reason you had an account but it was closed, and you can't open a traditional bank account with any financial institution, we have the Bank on LA program. This account, next slide, this program provides safe and affordable accounts to those who need an account, a bank account. There's, these are the different banks and credit unions that offer these accounts that, have low monthly maintenance fees, don't charge you overdraft fees. There's no check cashing fees. So if you're looking for, again, if you can get a traditional, account open with the bank or credit union, I would definitely suggest the Bank on LA program. Next slide. And because, you're still able to do your taxes, we do want to talk about, filing for taxes. So if you made less than $57,000 last year, you can go to any VITA location, which is the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance sites that can help you file for taxes. They look at to see if you qualify for any of the tax credits that are available. And again, this is free. You don't have to pay them, and they'll do your taxes for you. So again, the whole point is for you to keep most of your money and not give your money away. Next slide. And lastly, we're going to talk about the Financial Navigators program. So, during this whole time, or just in general, when you're looking, for some financial information or you need assistance, you want to make sure that you know where to get assistance and how to find these financial resources. Next slide. So the Financial Navigators program was a partnership with the national nonprofit Cities for Financial Empowerment, and this was in response to the COVID-19. The reason why this was established was because a lot of workers in various sectors were being laid off or experiences reduced hours at work. So this program was established to help our LA County residents kind of navigate these financial resources. There was a lot of different resources out there that people were a little confused as to what they were, how to qualify for them, where should they, go to apply. So we definitely wanted to make it a little bit easier, and that's why the Financial Navigators program was established. Next slide. So a financial navigator is someone who will help you, kind of navigate your financial concerns. Our navigators are trained on all the resources that are available to LA County residents. They'll help you triage the financial issues and also identify what referrals we can, send you to, where the resources and supports are available for you. And just to take note, a financial navigator is not a long-term financial counselor. And we don't provide any actual cash assistance. Okay, so we help you identify what those concerns are and connect you to other supports. Next slide. So during your financial navigation session, the financial navigator will ask you a few questions just to kind of get an idea as to what your situation is. A lot of people have called in and they're just, kind of stressed and overwhelmed that there's a lot of these different financial concerns that they don't even know where to start. So the financial navigator will definitely kind of help you. They'll ask you questions to kind of see what is it that is your actual priority of concerns. And there's a lot of different things that we can talk about. So during these sessions, we can talk about, how to pay for daily expenses, how to pay back debt, how do I supplement my income? Maybe still a lot of people did not apply for unemployment benefits, any of the programs. We talk about, locating food and other housing resources, are there programs to help me pay for my rent or my utilities? We provide you information, about the eviction moratoriums and where to get additional information on that. Also, let's say that you're looking to start planning or making a plan for your finances. A lot of people were caught off guard last year. Some people did have an emergency fund and they exhausted that emergency fund, or they did have savings and also spent all that money. And now they're trying to get back on track. Or maybe you didn't have an emergency fund and you want to start one. So we definitely have resources of agencies that can help you get that plan started. So here, both you and the navigator will prioritize your concerns and will go ahead and identify what steps you should be taking next. Next slide. So before your financial navigation session ends, the navigator will summarize the conversation and will make sure that all of your concerns were addressed. The navigator will then send you a call summary to just, providing you with the referrals. They can send it to you via email or a text message so that you'll have all the referrals, the contact information, so that you can contact these agencies for additional assistance. If for some reason, you weren't able to discuss a specific topic, or maybe you forgot to bring something up, you can definitely always fill out another, what we call an interest form, to speak to a financial navigator. Next slide. So, sign up. It's free. All of our services from the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs are free. You can go to our website at dcba.lacounty.gov. You can look for the financial navigators, fill out your interest form. You will then receive a link to fill out an intake form and to give consent that you want to receive the services. It's a very short form. It asks for your name, a contact information, and your callback preference. The second option would be, if you don't have access to internet or you're having a difficult time filling it out, you can always call our 800 number. It's 1-800-593-8222, and a counselor can definitely assist you in completing that form. So we are trying to contact all of our, all of you within 48 hours after you've submitted an interest form. Next slide. So if you're debating whether should I contact a financial navigator or not, if for any reason, you're having any of the following, financial concerns, call us. Okay. So if you're wanting to, start making a plan to pay off your debt, if you're in need of assistance of finding food, locations, maybe you don't know whether you qualify or what agencies are providing cash assistance, public assistance like Department of Public Social Services. If you need assistance in budgeting for daily expenses, coming up with a budget, maybe looking to see how you can eliminate some expenses, or how you can supplement your income, childcare services, utilities hardship. If you're looking for, a new job, maybe you were laid off and now it's time for you and you think maybe I should try something different. We definitely have agencies that can provide you with job search and skills building as well. Okay, so there's a lot of different topics that we cover. So again, if you're not sure, but it has to do with money in some way or another, give us a call. Again, it's free, and you want to make sure that you are getting the assistance and the resources that you need. Okay, next slide. So just as a recap, make sure that you're prioritizing your bills, and that way you can do is creating a budget so that you know exactly where your money is going, what expenses you may need to cut down, maybe eliminate, or maybe do a trade-off. Make sure that have a plan to manage your your debt. And also remembering that you want to maintain a good healthy a good credit healthy credit, sorry, and your score, that you're checking your credit report. Also avoiding any products that are high cost products or any alternative financial services. You want to make sure that you're building a relationship with financial institutions, a bank or credit union, or looking into our Bank on LA program to get a bank account. And lastly would be reaching out to us as financial navigators, or to the resources that you have available in your community. Even if you don't think that you qualify for certain things because someone told you that you couldn't, or you heard that you had to be eligible, you had to have certain requirements, give us a call, give the financial navigators a call, and see how we can help you, because there's definitely a resource out there that can help you. Okay, next slide. And just as we come to an end of our presentation, you can always reach us on our website at dcba.lacounty.gov. You can reach us by phone, 800-593-8222, or on any of our social media outlets. We post a lot of different information on what's going on in LA County. If you were to click on the Financial Navigator, it will take you to our Center for Financial Empowerment website on the next slide. Here we have information on, opening a checking account, financial tips, financial services, the tax prep. If you're still looking to do your taxes, make sure that you go on our website. We have the Financial Navigators link there as well. And we're also have been doing what we call COVID conversations, where we have different webinars on different topics. You can definitely see what the next schedule will be there for those conversations, or you can always look at our previous recorded conversations. And on the next slide, we're going to give you some resources that we talked about. Of course, our website, the Financial Navigators Program, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Here, this website provides a lot of educational information on credit, credit building, buying a car, whatever it may be, whatever financial topic, they have some information on there. So it's a great resource. Also, if you're, looking information about your debt, what your rights are, what debt collectors can and can't do, and what you can do if for some reason you feel that a debt collector is violating a law, you can definitely look at the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And the lending circles, you have the missionassetfund.org website that you can look into to see where here in LA, they are offering what organizations are part of this program. Okay, so again, thank you so much for allowing me to provide you this information, and I hope that it's helpful for you. And again, reach out to us. The information is free to all LA County residents. Our services are free, so please don't feel like you can't reach out to us. We're always here. We're Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30 p.m. And there's always a counselor ready to assist you. And thank you, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Alice, for that informative presentation. I appreciated how you mentioned the financial concerns that many of us have felt in the last year, whether it was losing our jobs or maybe having our hours reduced or using unemployment benefits. During these really sort of troubling, unprecedented times, we may not know where to start or who to turn to for help. And although it's easier said than done, it is important to remind ourselves of the many resources and options that are available to us in our community. By setting goals for ourselves or reaching out to financial navigators, such as the ones in your program, we can feel more confident and assured in our financial and legal planning. So, on behalf of the center, we are so grateful that you've joined us today. We hope that by joining our conference, we help to build your confidence when making legal and financial planning decisions. Through the presentations led by our experts today, we also hope that you've been able to find some additional tools and advice for your journey as a caregiver. As I mentioned earlier, today's half-day virtual conference is really only the beginning. This event is, as I said, an appetizer for our fall educational series called Hope is Not a Plan, Legal and Financial Planning for Family Caregivers. We actually have another 6 weeks of legal and financial planning topics planned just for you. You may have noticed the rolling banner on the screen throughout this event with the dates and topics of these upcoming educational events. On each of the next 6 Fridays after today, from September 3rd to October 8th, we will release a new video on our YouTube channel discussing how family caregivers can be affected by legal and financial planning issues. These videos will be led by dedicated professionals in our caregiving community who have worked in this field for many, many years and have helped many families with their knowledge and expertise. For more information on these upcoming events, you can visit the website at the bottom of this screen. I encourage you to join us as we uncover and make sense of these topics that have many of us stumped or maybe even derailed or confused our family caregivers on their caregiving journeys. Now, no one ever says that caregiving is easy, right? Caregiving is hard. Caregiving is difficult. And we may be faced with a lot of difficult decisions to make and tough conversations to have with our loved ones. As we continue to persevere, adapt, and work with what we have, keep in mind that you are never alone in this journey. Reach out to others, ask for help, and embrace these services that community organizations can offer you. Family caregivers need support, and our center is here for you. As I mentioned in the beginning of this conference, the USC Family Caregiver Support Center is here to help educate you, connect you to resources, and support you throughout your caregiving journey. Please be sure to visit us at www.fcsc.usc.edu or visit our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn more and connect with our center. This conference is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel if you or someone you know wants to watch it on their own later, or maybe you want to refer back to some of the information that we've discussed today. There's also an opportunity that you can, use the share button and share it with people, that you are connected with on social media. Now, if you by some chance came upon this video on accident and you don't know about our center yet, or maybe we've sparked your interest with these presentations today, please visit our website for more information. Better yet, you can even sign up for our program right on our website through the yellow Care Nav tab on the right-hand side of the page. Family caregivers really need support, and as I said before, our center is here for you. So let us know what we can do. Lastly, if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed this conference and found it helpful, please click on the like button below. Also, make sure to click on the red subscribe button to subscribe to our YouTube channel and be notified every time we post a new educational video for the caregiving community. Take good care of yourself, and until next time, just remember that caregivers fight on. Have a great rest of your day.